welcome again to the mechanistic pharmacology. As you all know that we had started a lecture series for the chemotherapy of tuberculosis, and in our previous lecture we had seen that the pathophysiology of tuberculosis. So friends, let's have a quick recap about our previous lecture about the pathophysiology of tuberculosis. So, in our previous lecture, we had seen that tuberculosis is one of the bacterial infection that is associated with the Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and this bacteria causes infection into the lungs where the nodules occur, characterized by the inflammatory reactions also. Friends, we had also seen about the salient features of Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So as you all know that this type of infection is very difficult to treat. Now the reason behind is the outermost cell wall structure of that Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Now the cell wall, 60% of the cell wall is made up of lipids, particularly of mycolic acid. Secondly, friends, this lipid is inaccessible to the antibiotics, so antibiotics does not enter inside. Secondly, this bacteria can remain in dry state also. It prevents the acidification of phagosome also, because the lysozyme are the enzyme which can kill the infection, kill any bacteria at its acidic pH, but our host defense mechanism uh, does not able to acidify this bacteria because it prevents the acidification process because it contains a special type of gene called as URAC gene, right? Now these are few reasons why this bacterial infection is difficult to treat. So we had seen in previous lecture about the different classification of the drugs. They are classified according to their safety profile as well as their use as far as tuberculosis is concerned. So they are classified as first line agent as well as second line agent. First line agents, they are relatively more efficacious drugs and having lower toxicity as compared to the second line drug. Second line drug, they do not have that much efficacy as compared to first line, and they are toxic also. So these are few points behind our before our previous lecture that we had discussed. Okay, now for today's lecture we are going to discuss the pharmacology of isoniazid. So as far as classification is concerned, I had already told you that first line agents are the important drugs, and they are included in almost all the regimen of the combination therapy in the tuberculosis. And this isoniazid is a drug which is developed in the year 1952, and it is a first line agent, widely used and widely prescription drug. Now this drug is also known as isonicotinic acid hydrazide, which is a prodrug. Now this drug is most active drug and one of the vital component for the treatment of tuberculosis. Friends, this drug possesses a special characteristic. Apart from its safety, apart from its efficacy, this one is the very active drug as far as the treatment of tuberculosis is concerned, and it is a prescription medicine. And interestingly, WHO put this drug under a category of list of essential medicine. So this is very important, that how this drug is effective against tuberculosis. Now, as I already told you that isoniazid is one of the most active drug. Now why this is active? Because it is bactericidal for both intracellular as well as extracellular microorganism. Intracellular means if the Mycobacterium tuberculosis resides inside the phagosome, then we can say it is an intracellular microorganism. So isoniazid can reach towards the intracellular part also, that can enter into the phagosome and can kill this bacteria. Now this drug is very active against fast multiplying bacilli as compared to the slow replicating bacilli. Now this drug is used for latent as well as active TB. Now friends, what do you mean by latent TB? Latent TB, it means the here the infection due to Mycobacterium tuberculosis is very less, and the patient not able, means the patient is not transmitting that tuberculosis at the latent state. But if the latent state of tuberculosis becomes active, then the transmission through cough, sneezing, laugh or talk must be transmitted from one person to the another. So this drug is used for both cases, for latent TB as well as for active one also. Now this drug is not effective against a atypical Mycobacterium except Mycobacterium canaceae, and it is active against all type of tuberculosis, and in combination with rifampicin and ethambutol it can work against Mycobacterium avium complex. You all know, I hope, that Mycobacterium avium complex is the here the HIV patient which are associated with the Mycobacterium avium. This will be treated upon combination with rifampicin as well as ethambutol. Now moving ahead about the structure of Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So friends, this bacteria composed of bacterial flagellum, outermost capsule, and the 60% of the cell wall is made up of lipids, which is composed of mycolic acid, cord factor as well as Wax D. This is the plasma membrane, and here the cytoplasm as well as nuclear circular DNA inside the Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Apart from it, it also contains ribosome, which is a protein machinery for this. Now the characteristics of Mycobacterium tuberculosis, that it is a aerobic microorganism, non-motile except Mycobacterium marinum, and it is also a acid fast bacilli which have thick cell wall. As I said you, 60% of the cell wall made up of lipid, particularly mycolic acid, cord factor as well as Wax D, and this is one of the non-motile microorganism. Now moving ahead towards the mechanism of isoniazid. Now this is extremely important as far as your PCI exams are concerned. Now let's consider this as a hypothetical structure of the Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Here is the capsule, the innermost here is the cell wall, this is the cytoplasm, and this is the circular DNA. So this is a hypothetical structure. Do not consider it as a perfect structure, as because this is mere for learning and understanding purpose only. So now you see the outermost shell wall, I already told you, that is composed of 60% of the lipids, in which mycolic acid is one of the important component. So these are the mycolic acid structure which provide strength towards the bacterial cell wall. Now this mycolic acid is encoded by particular gene, and the name of these gene are INHA as well as KSA. So we are discussing, have a discussion on it also, but later on. So this is a structure of the Mycobacterium tuberculosis cell wall. Okay, now coming towards the steps for the mechanism. Now first of all, this isoniazid, which is a prodrug, as I already told you, it converts into its active metabolite via enzyme catalase peroxidase. So what happened actually here? Isoniazid enters after a passive diffusion where no energy is required, and one gene encoded, this cat G is a gene which encodes this enzyme catalase peroxidase, and this catalase peroxidase convert this isoniazid into its active metabolite. Okay, now moving onwards, this active metabolites now it inhibits this acyl protein carrier reductase called as INHA. So INHA is what? It is a gene which encodes this mycolic acid synthesis, okay, in which INHA is a particularly active gene over which isoniazid have a prominent effect, okay. So what happens when this metabolite forms after passive diffusion? What this metabolite do? It inhibit this acyl protein carrier reductase, that is called as INHA gene. Along with it, it also inhibit protein carrier kinase, that is KASA gene. Now, after it, this affects the whole cell wall synthesis. Why? Because these two genes are responsible for the synthesis of mycolic acid, because they encode such a process so that the mycolic acid synthesis begins. Now friends, after it, this nuclear DNA, circular nuclear DNA, is also inhibited by the enzyme dihydrofolate reductase, and therefore it affects the DNA synthesis also. So what happened? First of all, the mycolic acid synthesis is inhibited, as along with it the DNA synthesis is also inhibited. So overall what happened? This weakens the cell wall. Now when this cell wall weakens, you see here now there is no mycolic acid. No mycolic acid, it means the strength of the bacteria is now decreases, and it weakens the cell wall, and it kills the bacteria as the dose increases. Now it is bacteriostatic for the slow dividing microorganism, and however it is bactericidal for the fast dividing species. So this is a very simple mechanism of isoniazid. Moving ahead, the pharmacokinetics of isoniazid. Friends, it is a very small drug and it is water soluble in nature. So as far as absorption is concerned, it is very well absorbed via oral route. Distribution, it is distributed in pleural, peritoneal as well as synovial fluids in a very good manner. Then metabolism. Now this is very important part as far as the GPAT exam is concerned. It is metabolized by liver via enzyme N-acetyl transferase to acetyl isoniazid via NAT transporter. So this is the N-acetyl transferase 2 protein which cause the metabolism of this drug. Now acetylator status determines the toxicity of isoniazid. This is extremely important. So Indians are very slow acetylators, therefore they develop peripheral neuritis. Now what is peripheral neuritis? So what actually happen, whatever the nerve impulse formation, transmission or messenger means one message is transferred from the peripheral nervous system towards the central one, it is in the form of nerves, and this is a coordinated movement of our body. So in peripheral neuritis what happens? This coordinated movement disturbed, right? Means there is no connectivity as far as the information is concerned from the brain towards the spinal cord or from the peripheral towards the central part. So this is said to be a peripheral neuritis which can affect the neuronal membrane of the brain. Now again, acetylhydrazine forms after action of cytochrome 2E1, which is one of the reason why this drug cause the hepatotoxicity due to the metabolite acetylhydrazine. So this must be remembered, which metabolite of isoniazid is hepatotoxic in nature. So your answer should be acetylhydrazine, which forms after cytochrome 2E1 metabolism. Now friends, as far as half-life is concerned, the half-life is 1 to 3 hours, and excretion, the drug is excreted via kidney through glomerular filtration as well as renal secretion. Now moving therapeutic uses of isoniazid. Friends, this drug is effective against latent as well as against active tuberculosis infection. It is effective against meningitis also, and also upon combination with ethambutol as well as rifampicin, this drug is effective against Mycobacterium avium complex 2. Now dose, the therapeutic dose is 300 mg once a daily for typical adult, then that is 5 mg per kg per day will be given to an adult, and for the serious infection this dose can also be increases up to 10 mg per kg per day. Now adverse effects of isoniazid. As this drug crosses the blood-brain barrier, therefore this drug causes amnesia, that is memory loss, hallucinations, psychosis, epilepsy as well as peripheral neuropathy. And this peripheral neuropathy is maximum occurs into slow acetylators as compared to fast acetylator. And this peripheral neuropathy is also minimizes why when we take vitamin B6 at dose of 10 to 40 milligram per kg per day. So this dose upon concomitant treatment, it will decreases the effect of peripheral neuropathy. Now isoniazid is structurally similar towards the pyridoxine, and this pyridoxine uses enzyme phosphokinase so that it convert into pyridoxal phosphate, and now this pyridoxal phosphate is involved into the synthesis of GABA, histamine, then 5-hydroxytryptamine, dopamine and many more amine. So what happened, isoniazid here, what it do, it will inhibit this enzyme as well as this pyridoxal phosphate formation and forms a hydrazone derivative. Now this derivative causes the decrease into the synthesis of GABA, as because this gamma aminobutyric acid, which is an inhibitory neurotransmitter, it uses pyridoxal phosphate for its synthesis, and due to inhibition of this GABA synthesis, therefore paresthesias, mental disturbance or convulsions may occur, and therefore friends, this peripheral neuropathy minimizes by doses of vitamin B6 when it take at 10 to 15 milligram per day. Now fast acetylators, they causes hepatotoxicity. Now again, sideroblastic anemia is one of the adverse effect of isoniazid due to the reason of decrease in delta aminolevinic acid synthase 2, and therefore it affects the heme synthesis. Now friends, this pyridoxal phosphate is also important for the synthesis of this enzyme, and under the inhibition of this enzyme, the sideroblastic anemia may occur. Now arthritis into the upper limb, that is called as shoulder hand syndrome, which is caused due to the isoniazid. Xerostomia, that is dry mouth, and lastly gynecomastia, that is enlargement of the breast tissues, occur in male. So thank you very much everyone. This is all from my side, and these are few references that I had taken for the study. And for our next lecture, we are going to learn about the pharmacology of rifampicin, that is extremely important as far as your GPAT exam is concerned. So stay tuned, do subscribe, support, share and comment. Thank you very much.